Coogs House. The Houston Cougars start Big 12 basketball this weekend with West Virginia. But what should they expect? What will the game look like? And what do the Mountaineers have in store for Houston?
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, a daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to step by, please be sure to subscribe down below. That wing is latest on Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. Appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you found us on YouTube, welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's so good to see you again. We're up over 1,900 subscribers, and we're doing a giveaway every 250. The next one of those markers is at 2,000. So hit subscribe, helps get there. Like, comment the video, let us know you're in the contest. If you're a football guy, you're a Big 12 guy, you're a West Virginia guy, you're someone here that just doesn't know what to say after a full episode on Houston Cougar basketball, tell us in the comments. All right, I had this discussion with people at work today. When it comes to those big, like, cups you drink out of, the popular one right now is Stanley, it was Yeti, it was a Swell water bottle, it was a Nalgene water bottle, those big vessels for water. Which one's been your favorite? I'm a Yeti guy. All right, so today's episode is going to be looking at getting ready for the West Virginia game this week. And I'll first talk about this first segment about scouting them and why they're kind of a weird team to scout, and why it's hard to get a complete beat on what they will look like and what challenges that presents. Second segment, I want to talk about how weak they are on defense, where Houston can exploit them and honestly score a lot of points. Scoring points is important. Scoring points is how you win the game. Scoring more points in a team, I should say, is how you win the game. And then third and final segment, I want to talk some about where I think they're really strong, and that is on the offense side of the basketball. If things from my scouting go like I think they should. So let's talk about the scouting part and how weird this was. First, I'd say my initial watch when I was like, I'm going to watch a game of West Virginia's. I watched them a little quick because I was trying to fit a lot of things in during the week. I'm going to put it, I'm going to go find the West Virginia and Virginia game. A little bit of a rivalry there. Virginia plays great defense. See how they responded, right? I think that's a good team to watch when I'm trying to think how this team will play against Houston. Not that Houston and Virginia do the same things, but that's what I thought. So I pulled West Virginia, Virginia. I think it's be a tough defense, low scoring, etc. And it was. And then I look at their most recent box scores, talked to Coogs yesterday before and after the pod. 5 of the 7 guys that got real minutes for West Virginia in the Virginia game should actually be in the rotation at all this weekend. They have a whole host of other guys playing. The roster's been up and down and changed a whole lot. And getting RaeQuan Battle back for the last 3 games dramatically shifts what they look like and what they do. They also, for its worth, have had a massive loss to their roster. Not just adding RaeQuan Battle, but Jesse Edwards is a giant center, 6'11", long arms. I don't know what his wingspan is, but really, really big guy in the middle that is a whole different kind of rim defender than anyone else on their roster. He's out with a broken wrist. And so suddenly their roster looks a whole lot different. I will say, in watching guys that played in that Virginia game, while it didn't feel like a fair assessment of them, they really did shoot the ball just mediocrely. They had a lot of turnovers. I was impressed that they won the rebounding battle. Jesse Edwards, that center that is now hurt, had 9 of their 41 team rebounds. So take that as you may. Virginia also, I think, while I think of them schematically as a strong defensive team, that is why I like to scout and use them as a reference when I can for Houston. Frankly, Virginia is not as good as they've been in the past. They got waxed by Memphis and Notre Dame and Wisconsin. I guess they did beat A&M at home in Virginia, but they are not the Virginia of old. So kind of made for a weird scout. So then I put on the Ohio State game because the highest level competition they played in the 3 games since they got RaeQuan Battle back. And Ohio State won in overtime by 3. Battle himself had 24 points on 19 shots. He was 3 of 8 from behind the arc. He also had 10 rebounds and 3 steals. I should point out he's getting nearly 30 points per game on the season in his 3 games thus far and less than 1 assist per game. He's an old-fashioned isolation bucket getting kind of 6'4", 6'5" kind of perimeter guy. Feels very like mid 2000s with a good 3-point jump shot kind of basketball player. If you have been following the way the game has evolved a lot of the last 20 years or so. Good isolation bucket getter. Really, like he's going to be a pro, like really good isolation bucket getter. Noah Farrakhan I was also impressed with. He's a senior point guard. He filled up. He had 19 points against Ohio State. He gets a lot of twos. We'll talk in their offense section about how much rim pressure he puts on the basketball, but he really, really gets downhill fast. They, meaning Coogs and Paul and frankly, the way they run sets are really, really high on their other guard, Kirk Risa. I wasn't as much. He didn't play particularly well against Ohio State. It looks like to me in watching that Ohio State game, he's kind of their third backcourt option to score the basketball. And we saw, and I mentioned how much RaeQuan Battle is an isolation type guy at his best. I also, for what's worth, Kirk Chris is the same guy that was at Arizona a couple years ago. Jamal Shed covered him and shut him down. So when you put those two things together, if he were to get hot from behind the arc, because he is a legacy shooter, he's got great shooting percentages on his career, I would just say let Jamal get him. I imagine Jamal gets Farrakhan. I imagine Sharp gets Battle. And I'd imagine Cryer gets Krisa, but I'm just spitballing there. You can see a number of other different things too. I'd love the idea of mixing up Damian Dunn some on Battle and stuff like that. But those are the kind of matchups I envision. Other guy I think need to be impressed with is actually a front court player for them, Quinn Slazinski. He's the kind of big that gives Houston problems. He's a big that shoots the ball very well. Now against Ohio State, he didn't make a 3, and so I know that seems like, Parker, that's the game you watched. He's over 31% on the year from behind the arc. He's 6'8". He was 3 of 8 from 3 against Virginia, for what it's worth. He also led the team in points that game against Virginia. Fun fact on Quinn Slazinski, he's a Houston area guy. He actually went to Westbury Christian for part of his high school before ultimately going to Huntington Prep, which is a prep school for basketball all the time kind of stuff out east. I believe it's actually in West Virginia. And so he's coming home. And so I mentioned his name again as a guy that he's the kind of guy that gives you some problems, a perimeter shooter, puts the ball on the floor pretty well. Coming home, you could see a little bit extra oomph that could give him. I also think it'd be very common to look at this team and say, we got to shut down RaeQuan Battle. We got to keep Noah Farrakhan out of the paint. And putting a bunch of, and you're just plugging up holes in the dam, and then you all of a sudden lose track of where the Slazinskis of the world are. I could see that being a problem. Now, obviously, Jamal Roberts will be able to cover him one-on-one if he's completely healthy, but we also know that Roberts he's practicing, looks like he's going to play, but he missed the last game with the soreness. He came out of the game before that with a quad contusion. It's been a couple of weeks, but you're hoping that he's rested up and healthy because, again, that's a guy that could give Houston problems right there. I really, really do think that their roster is interesting, though, because even statistically, when you look at who gets the most points per game, obviously RaeQuan Battle gets 27.5, so that kind of leads the forefront. But Slazinski, it has is getting 15.5. Well, he's getting a lot less than that since Battle's been back. But we also know that if you shut down RaeQuan Battle, that they can run sets and get Slazinski the ball, because he had to kind of lead the way in offense with Battle out. So that back and forth, I think, makes them a really weird and interesting scout. The Ohio State game, I think, was the most interesting to watch because it is a high-level competition. It was a neutral court, technically. It was in Ohio, but a neutral court. And for what it's worth, it's also their most recent game. And I think that's kind of well, it's been a week. It's what they're coming off of. So in the next segment, I'll talk about what kind of things I noticed on their defense and what things I think Houston can take advantage of that they don't do very well defensively. But first, we're talking about taking advantage of things. everyone's been taking advantage of ways to make money, right? I mean, this is America after all. And if you want to make money right now, you go to FanDuel.com because the regular NFL regular season is wrapping up, and there's no better time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get a $150 bonus bets back in bonus bets. Back in bonus bets. It's hard to say fast. It's really easy to do this bet deal though. $150 back in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. You put 5 down, you get 150 back in bonus bets. No problem, win or lose. So go to FanDuel.com. Right now, they got the Houston Texans as a 1.5 point dog, or 1.5 point favorite. I'm sorry, I'm reading things wrong. This weekend, the money line set at -116 for Houston. I'm taking the Texans across the board. They got to win this game to have a chance to get into the playoffs. We also know that CJ Stroud's going to be a little upset about the way that Pro Bowl voting goes. It's going to be a great bounce back moment for him. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup today. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. So I mentioned that they have this defense that I think Houston can take a lot of advantages of. And especially with Jesse Edwards out in the middle, I think that they just have a weaker defense. They're gonna want to play a high scoring game with Houston, and I think Houston is going to get basically as many points as they're shooting. I mean, if they're shooting well, it's going to be like the only determinant. It's not going to have anything to do necessarily with what kind of coverages they throw out there. So as I'm watching, West Virginia rolls out what I would call, they go back and forth between a traditional 53 or 54 defense. That means of the 5 positions, the 50 part of that, they're switching 3 or 4 spots. They're really not switching the center spot. Sometimes based on matchup with Slazinski, they'll switch the power forward spot or not. But otherwise, they're really switching the majority of their backcourt guys as far as just straight up switching on every screen kind of in actions, right? They don't run a whole lot of zone based on percentages, but they did run it for stretches of the Ohio State game. So again, back to that scouting thing, they're traditionally a man team, been a man team all this year. They've got a new coach this year, so this is the only year we have to go on with him. But also the Ohio State game is the most recent game, and they went to zone for stretches of that one. So take that as you may. Like big picture schematic, like trendy kind of things you see with their defenses. They do a lot of gambling for SportsCenter type plays. They bite on ball fakes. They, jump passing lanes to try and steal for a home run layup kind of deal. They want to make that SportsCenter top 10 play. They want to kind of get the crowd energized, and when they're at home, they want to kind of suppress the crowd when they're on the road with some sort of a silencing dunk or whatever on the fast break. That all comes from taking gambles and risks. And frankly, Ohio State and Virginia were both able to take advantage of that trend with ball fakes, methodical offense, making them spend long possessions. We know Houston has the ability to do that. We also know that Houston's got really talented guards and backcourt, and that kind of falls on them, frankly, to make sure that the ball is taken care of. I think Houston's fine in that area. Now, West Virginia's going to they're going to go for a bunch of those. They'll probably get a few. It's Big 12 basketball. You can't fold your cards and leave just because they got to steal a breakaway dunk or whatever. But it's going to happen a couple times. They're going to go for a lot more, and if you can make them pay and win the ratio there, I think you're okay, and I think Houston will. West Virginia is really, really bad at keeping teams off the glass. Ohio State had 18 offensive rebounds. Ken Pom, who ranks things analytically across all 333 college basketball teams, Division I college basketball teams, has Ohio State as the 33rd best offensive rebounding team in America by percentage. And that's including that game where they had 18 offensive rebounds against West Virginia. For reference, Houston's 4th, right? Houston is a demonstrably much better team, an elite, highest of high level offensive rebounding team. And they gave Ohio State, a good one, 18 offensive rebounds. That's ridiculous, right? Houston could easily break 20 offensive rebounds in this game if there's that many to be had. Look to watch Houston get up to 50-ish% of their misses back and put back opportunities. And again, that's assuming the trends continue and things continue because they are a weird team to scout. They're just now getting guys back, but Jesse Edwards is still out. I will say that for what it's worth, when he was in the middle against Virginia, I thought they rebounded a little bit better, but that's not our problem right now, frankly, right? Their big man they put down low for majority of the game against Ohio State was a cuck. He appears to always kind of defensively be stuck in no man's lane. He's not quite over and help enough to really get help on a driver unless they go all the way to the rim. But he's also not typically close enough to his guy to prevent a drop off for an easy assist to the big man. So if Houston can kind of continue to widen that space, especially with a guy like JoJo Tugler or Javier Francis down there that are so long, that can kind of take advantage and take an extra step further away, right? Those guys with that kind of length down there in that dunker spot area really continue to stress and put him in conflict to what we call as coaches, right? Put him in a spot where he has to make a decision, and it's a bad decision. You got Jamal Shed driving at his face. Does he come over and help? Then Jamal Shed drops it. He's got a dunk on his head, but JoJo Tugler behind him. Does he not leave Tugler? Then he's getting at the layup to Jamal Shed, right? Those kinds of things put him in a bind where a floater is like his nightmare because he cannot get over to help fast enough, right? Now, I say all that to say that like he's also a guy that has like high upside. I think initially started it. I think I saw UConn. Was at Georgetown most recently. Most of these guys on this roster are transfers that came in after the Huggins thing from the summer, right? And so maybe he's just figuring out the system still or something there. But it does look like to me like he struggles in those areas. It also, because he's stuck in the no man's land, is kind of one of the reasons they give up a lot of offensive rebounds. They got a lot of guys that do what we call coaches don't want to see it. They call it ball watching, where they see the ball go up in the air and they just kind of watch it go off the rim. And unless you're Dennis Rodman, where you're actually tracking the ball to see where it goes, that's generally speaking a bad thing. Really, really not a great offensive rebounding team. People, meaning Coogs and Paul from the Hilltop Hoops show, they were telling me that that's really because Edwards is out. He covered up a lot of mistakes for them, apparently. I don't know. I don't think that. I just don't think a very good defensive team. Now, I will say that they have length at backcourt positions. I mean, RaeQuan Battle's, like I said, 6'4", 6'5", and I think Farrakhan's listed at 6'2", but he looks like he's got a very long arm wingspan. Krissa is also a long 6'3" or so. Like they've got length, they've got length in the backcourt, and then frankly, Quinn Slazinski is a 6'8" perimeter guy that plays the power forward spot for them, right? And so if he's switching and they are switching all four perimeter spots, they can cause problems in those areas. And I don't mean to say they have nothing going for them defensively. They're still a Big 12 basketball team. And while they are not a Bob Huggins West Virginia team, there is something culturally about that program and defense that you think Eilert would be able to carry over from previous iterations of the program. I imagine what you see Houston do is a lot of those quick hitter kind of actions. And they also, I could imagine getting to like transitioning from those into a traditional 4-out motion where you're doing a lot of pass and screen away, pass and ball screen, getting somewhere to an empty side where you have a roll man and a Tugler or roll man and a Roberts. And you can kind of drop it off and put a cuck in that bad conflict area like we're talking about. I anticipate them getting a bunch of putbacks. This kind of game, frankly, that like Tugler had a great pin game. This could continue to accelerate his learning process on offense and the offense side of the basketball. I really think Tugler could have a great day off the bench in this game. One of the reasons I thought they should also like maybe put some sort of a minutes restriction on Roberts and those kind of things is like this is actually a game set up for Tugler to do very well. But we'll see how they play that thing out. Whatever the case may be, I think Houston does very well on offense, scores a lot of points in this basketball game. That said, while I'm an offensive guy and I love talking about how much Houston will score on offense in this game, the truth is it's not just about how much you score, it's also about how much you keep the other team from scoring. That's what I want to talk about and what Houston's task is in the final segment, because that's going to be more difficult. But one thing that is a lot less difficult is finding tickets to things around Houston to go do. There's all kinds of things to do around Houston: comedy, theater, arts, sports, anything you'd want to do, you can go do it. But you're always looking for good tickets and great prices, and Game Time is the app for you. It's got the best prices guaranteed. They have all kinds of tickets, all kinds of events all over town. They can, you give them the section you want to sit in. They'll tell you what your seat looks like. They'll show you screenshots and videos of what the event will look like from that vantage point. You say, I want to sit in this section. Let them pick your row and seat. You get an average of 18% savings by letting them do that as well. All kinds of cool things on the Game Time app. So download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your purchase. Again, that's code Locked On College. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, so offensively, I think is where West Virginia really thrives. And when we talked to Coogs yesterday, I asked, what's on the line for West Virginia right now? Are they really going to potentially miss the tournament this year after the progress the program made last year? And he made the comment that, they are the kind of team that can get hot in the Big 12 tournament, just win the conference tournament and get in that way. And offensively, I absolutely see what he's talking about. Because frankly, in one game samples like that tournament or like this weekend where Houston plays West Virginia, frankly, if a dude just gets hot, you can't do a whole lot about it sometimes. RaeQuan Battle is that guy. He's a pro two guard in every sense of the word. Again, 6'4-ish, 6'5", long arms, about a buck 80, 85, meaning he's a well-built guy. And he's really a true traditional 3-level scorer. He can finish at the rim with both craftiness and strength. He's not afraid to pull up in the mid-range, although I think he'd rather pull up for 3. He does that off the bounce. He does off the catch and shoot. He loves to score in isolation. He wants to score the basketball. Full stop. No questions asked. Again, he's getting nearly 30 points per game and less than 1 assist per game. The guy can score. He doesn't want to do a whole lot else. I think Houston starts Emanuel Sharp on him in the basketball game. But this is not a one-person job. This is a 5 people guard the ball, as Coach Kelvin Sampson always says, kind of responsibility. And it's going to have help side guys rotating over to cut off the lane. It's going to have the helper type backside rotation guys, making sure they cut off passing lanes to put him in a conflict spot there. He's just, he takes a lot of attention. And Houston's great defensively. Houston should be fine, but he's going to probably have, so we saw Wade Taylor get hot in the Texas A&M game. He's probably going to have moments that feel like that Wade Taylor behind the arc performance in that game, right? Now, does he get 36? Lord, I hope not. But I don't, I say I hope not because I guess he is capable. But I do think Houston can find ways to win the game, even if he gets his 27 or 28 points in this basketball game, because they're going to need to score more than 30 points to win the game if they're West Virginia, right? Now, again, he's an isolation guy. He and Farrakhan both. Farrakhan is Noah Farrakhan's a lot more of an attack the rim type point guard, crazy explosive and athletic, very tough-minded, tough kid, and an impressive kid. I like watching kid play basketball, so I don't mean that to say he can't do other things, but he's more willing to pass the ball, for instance, than RaeQuan Battle is, it looked like to me. Whatever the case may be, they like to get them both the ball going downhill on the wings and perimeters. They'll run different horn sets. So a horn set, if you're not a basketball coach or not into basketball, is where you have, upside down hook 'em horn kind of thing, where you have like guys in the corners, 2 posts, like the 2 in between fingers at the top of the key, and the guard can kind of go off either one of those. What they're doing with that is they're actually going off of it to send the other 2 posts to go get the other corner and pull RaeQuan Battle up off the double screen, hopefully alleviate him enough to catch the ball in an isolation type position. They do that in a couple different actions to get him the ball in the half court. I bet if I sat down with RaeQuan, talk about what he likes to do best, he appears to be at his best in transition. As a team, they shoot a lot of transition threes. Battle himself is impossibly athletic at the rim. He's just difficult to cover in that area in transition. They'll do things like backside pin downs to get he or Farrakhan up off of up off of double screens for three. They'll do that for Slazinski some too if he's hot, like they did against Virginia. They'll do that some for Krisa too. Krisa is again like a third or fourth option for them. I thought it was interesting in the Ohio State game. They brought in a backup big for Cock, who seemed, frankly, a little more offensively minded. They had to go to a zone to cover him up on defense because he's not a great defender. I think he gets lost on action. So if they were willing to go zone against Houston, which I don't think they will, but if they were, a kid named Patrick Sumnick, he comes in as the other backup big spot, the true traditional center. He's a 6'8", 6'9" kind of guy. I will say, though, while I feel like I'm being a little harsh on him, he is really good at finishing around the rim, has soft hands on the catch, and he's able to take advantage against Ohio State on some great slips and dives and those kinds of things. And he's a big body, so they'd run different kinds of empty side actions. They get him in a pick and roll where he and Farrakhan are the only two guys on the half the floor, put people in conflict, and again, he had soft hands, could finish well. I really like this one action they ran for Farrakhan where they did a wheel kind of concept where he basically ran like a giant loop-de-loop around, like from the left wing down around the right block and then back around the screen, catch the ball after running his defender ragged, and then has as soon as he catches it, he's got that Sumnick guy right there, set an empty side pick and roll on him. And then the defender that has just spent his last breath chasing Farrakhan around the floor is then catching a big defender to the side of the face on a screen. Now they got called in both Virginia and both the Virginia and the Ohio State games for illegal screens, which A means that hopefully they get a couple of those against Houston as well. But B means they're really, really aggressive and physical in doing it. They're seeking contact. They understand that they have two guys that are really and RaeQuan Battle being NBA level special with the basketball in their hands and trying to get you off of them. They're really good and talented offensively. Now, I know they only scored in overtime. They're only able to put up 75 points against Ohio State. I think it was 68 at the end of regulation. And you think well, we've seen Houston score in the 80s before. What? But I'm telling you right now that that was a hard fought, frankly. Ohio State tried to slow the pace down basketball game, and they were still – yes, they played overtime up into the mid-70s, right? This is a talented offensive group. Houston's got as good a defense as, for my money, as anyone in America. But I do think it's going to get tested this weekend. Home crowd should be an advantage, especially for a defensive game that Houston going to need to be mucking up the signals and calls for them and kind of messing up their communication. That is, I anticipate Houston winning this game. I think it might even get to double digits, like 12 or 14 points, because I think, frankly, that while West Virginia's offense is really good, Houston's defense is good enough to slow it down, and I think Houston's going to score a lot of points. This game that I could see Houston winning 76-62 or something in that range. Let's say 76-64 to give them a little more credit. I think it's going to be 8-ish points before free throws and those kind of things at the end. Houston got to make their free throws. I'm watching you guys. Houston got to make their free throws, which has been kind of a problem at different points of the year, obviously. But I do think Houston comes out with a victory this weekend before going on the road to Iowa State on Tuesday. That's a tough matchup. They can't look down the road like I am. They need to be ready to play on Saturday. But I do think that Houston comes away with one in this one. They just have too many things they can take advantage of on offense. Unless they just are shooting that poorly, I think Houston's going to score when they want to, how they want to, and come away with the victory this weekend. If you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm crazy, if you think I'm doing something inaccurately, if I'm portraying something wrong, tell me in the comments down below. I'm open to feedback. Or find me on X, Twitter, TikToks, Instagram, wherever you're on Blue Sky, any social media. I'm at Painsworth512, PAINSWORTH 512 on Twitter and Instagram, and all of your favorite social media. That's my handle. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. Locked On Coogs is a primary Locked On podcast. So that means your team, our Coogs, every day. Go Coogs.